Hey all, this is one of my favorite lecture topics we're going to cover today. I realize I probably say this all the time, but this one really is because this is based on my personal research. My area of particular interest is twice exceptional students. As we've talked about earlier, those are students who are also gifted but have some sort of disability alongside of that. And so there's this weird mix of abilities and struggles these students have, and understanding these students and things that can help support them in the classroom is really what interests me. And so when I did this study here, it's what's called, it's a fancy word, transcendental phenomenological study. Basically what it's saying is this is a philosophical way to approach this topic, that you're looking at the students in a fresh new way. You're getting rid of all your preconceived misconceptions. And so we'll discuss that a little bit more later. But it's basically, it was understanding the self-efficacy of these students. Understanding twice exceptional students is a very new field in special education. And when I say there's a handful of us in the nation who actually have this as our area, I'm not kidding. I'm one of the few. And so this study was done at East Lake School District. It's a pseudonym. It's not the real district. And what I used as my theoretical framework is the three ideas. The first is the affirmative model of disability. In other words, this model looks at the strengths that and the gifts that people with disabilities have and the positive impact that a disability can have on an individual's life. The next theoretical framework was self-determination, and it's all about students' belief in their ability to initiate their own success, that they can make success happen. And the last one is self-efficacy, obviously probably the heaviest one in here. And this is students, they need to be encouraged that they can achieve success through their works, and that what they do has an impact on how they succeed. And the ability that they can control their outcomes increases student motivation. So the participants here, the school I used, there's 2,700 students in the high school, in the high school. The population is 60% white, 30% African American, 5% Hispanic, 3% mixed race, and 2% Asian. And their reading, math, and language test scores are higher than the state average, and the district graduation rate is 88%, which is also higher than the state average. However, 34% of the students receive free or reduced lunches. So it's a school that's doing some really good things. So there were 10 participants in this study, and there was a lot of things I did to collect data for what's called triangulation, to make sure the data matches, that it's not just an anomaly from one section to another. Sorry, that was my daughter dropping something in the kitchen. So the self-efficacy scale, and this is self-reported. So students use this to report their feelings of self-efficacy. Sorry, had to pause and make sure she was okay. I also conducted interviews, asking students specifically about their experience. And then there was also what's called artwork analysis, where students created a collage, pulling pictures from magazines of their school experiences and how they felt about school, and then explained them. And you can see some examples of the artwork that students had created here that I used for the triangulation purposes. Then I had to analyze the data. The first thing you come in with phenomenological is this sense of wonder. So have you ever been on the beach and watched the sunrise? And it just takes your breath away with this sense of awe and the amazing God we serve. And that's how you have to go in with this, that you have to just be amazed by what you see throughout, that you take any personal opinions you have and you bracket them. And I do have personal opinions in this. We all do. I probably come in with more because I have a child who is twice exceptional. And then throughout the process, you're constantly taking notes. You're writing very thick and rich descriptions so that people can visualize and see what's happening. And if you're ever so bored that you want to read my dissertation, the narratives of the participants are almost like reading a book because of the descriptions. Then afterwards, you create horizontalization. How are things aligning? What themes do you see coming out? And then you code categories and you create these textual and structural descriptions, and you synthesize all the information together. Honestly, it sounds like a lot of work, but it was really, really fun. So then this was my development of themes, and I plugged my whole paperwork into one of those things that pulls out the main words. And what you'll see here is you can see the words that stuck out to these students throughout. And what the themes I noted were this idea of positive self-efficacy, poor self-efficacy, and then students explaining ways they could improve their self-efficacy. And when it came to positive self-efficacy, there were 4 themes that came across. The idea that their giftedness contributed to these positive thoughts, that their teachers influenced the positive self-efficacy, that their family had a large role in having these students have this positive self-efficacy. And this is the cool thing. This is where those people, when you're teaching ROTC, art, music, PE, non-traditional classes, ag classes, this is where these students felt they were the most successful, that they could do the most, these non-traditional classes. Then we had the area of poor self-efficacy, and students who had this feeling, they focused on their disability. They constantly felt frustrated. They were very doubtful of their own ability to succeed, and their teachers played into this. And guys, your superpower is that you are a teacher, and teachers can have such a positive impact, but they can also have a negative impact. And these teachers spoke words into these students' lives and hearts that really brought them down. And the last theme was ways to increase self-efficacy. And students talked about the fact that they could focus more on their studies. They could better communicate with teachers and peers when they needed help, that they could build relationships. And so these were ways they felt they could improve it. Now, the central research question was, what are the shared experiences of self-efficacy in high school 2E students? That time that wasn't my daughter. We have construction going on in our basement right now, and that was them cutting a hole in one of our pipes. Hopefully I can still shower later. So the central research question, what I saw is students knew that what their abilities were and their disabilities were. And to the students, they were very obvious. That a lot of these students, they embraced the idea of being different and the fact that they were twice exceptional, that this was something that set them apart from their classmates. They don't want to be defined by their disability. And unfortunately, that's a lot of what we do. They want people, especially peers, to realize they have these gifts and talents. But here's the kicker. They have to work harder than their peers. Like, yes, they're gifted, but when they have that area of disability, it means they're working so much harder, that they have to persevere through difficult classes that are associated with their disability, that these are classes they're going to struggle and they're going to need more assistance, and that teachers acknowledge where they are gifted and challenge them in the classroom, that they're not so focused on their disability and what they can do to help that they forget all about this giftedness, that they're challenging them in the classroom. Then I had a sub-question. How do they describe their self-efficacy in their area of giftedness? Well, obviously, they're going to have very high levels of self-efficacy, as I discovered in their area of giftedness. But they had 2 views of this. They had basically a growth mindset, that giftedness was something they could prove on. And then they had the fixed mindset, that their giftedness was based on uncontrollable factors. It's my genetics. It's the way I was born. And so those were the 2 mindsets of it. My next sub-question was, how do they describe their self-efficacy in the area of difficulty? Well, these students across the board reported lower feelings of self-efficacy in their area of difficulty. That here they always, across the board, seem to have a fixed mindset, that there's nothing I can do to get better. They did, though, observe changes in their grades. And when changes in their grades were positive, it increased their motivation and The third sub-question is, how are they perceiving supports from parents, teachers, friends in helping their academic self-efficacy? Big one here. Teachers, I said it earlier, I said it again, it's your superpower. Your words and your actions increase a student's self-efficacy. That when parents push the students, it propels them towards higher self-efficacy. Family involvement as well, not just even pushing the students, but just the family having quality time and giving their student words of encouragement increases it. And here's another important factor. Friendship in the high school raises the self-efficacy. But some of these students have difficulty making friends. There were some students with autism spectrum disorder that had difficulty making and retaining friendships. But friendships also are the reason some of these students enjoy school. So it's a very tricky situation. Now, the next sub question was, how does this label affect their self-efficacy? And across the board, they felt like there was a sense of hope, that 2E meant their disability wasn't their defining characteristic, that there was more to them, that they wanted others to recognize their giftedness, and they wanted people to avoid sweeping generalizations. Oh, looking only at the giftedness, and this child's gifted, which means they're gifted in everything. No, that's not the case. That there is a focus on their disability, and when that happens, sometimes they lose sight of how incredible they are. When they view their disability through the lens of the disability, this becomes how they define themselves, though. And they do struggle with their differing abilities. The fact that they're gifted in one area, then they struggle so greatly in another. And it's hard for them to put these two juxtaposed ideas and concepts together. Now, the summary. Teachers play a predominant role. Guys, you can pour words of life and words of encouragement, or you can crush a student. You have that power. Students tend to focus on either their disability or their giftedness. Students themselves, they either say, oh, I'm gifted, and forget they need extra help, or they say, oh, I have this disability, and forget how gifted they are. Students identified actions that would increase their own self-efficacy, and we'll look at some of those a little bit later. Now, the implications, what this means in policy for district leaders. Students diagnosed with 2E are going to tend to be white males. Females and students of color are not diagnosed as twice exceptional. Identification of gifted and talented females and African Americans needs to become a priority. The testing we currently use is not indicative of true giftedness. Giftedness comes in a variety of shapes and measures, and while there is a place and a purpose for these tests that they're given, and in some cases they work, they don't always work. As we talked about earlier, the idea of masking, where students' ability is to the level that it masks the disability, but the disability is so great that it doesn't show how gifted the students are. Then in practice, less than half the 2E students involved in the study were in gifted educational opportunities. They were in special education, but they weren't given the gifted opportunities. So increasing that. The school I was at, there's no gifted instruction teachers at the high school. And as we know, giftedness is not part of IDEA. And so there's no federal funding or support that goes with it. It's up to states. And then within states, it's up to individual districts. Parents need to be aware of gifted opportunities so they can push for their students to have those options. And obviously, we're going to need more teacher training so teachers know how to work with these students. So how did this all align with the theoretical and empirical implications? So first off, self-efficacy. Higher self-efficacy in their area of giftedness, lower self-efficacy in their area of disability. That affirmative model of disability. When they viewed their disability positively, they also had a higher self-efficacy even in their area of disability. And then the idea of self-determination. If they see their disability as something changeable and not something that's fixed, they are motivated to do better. Now, there were limitations. When the study was done, we were just seeing the end of the impact of COVID. There was a lack of social interaction happening. There was a lot of online education that had just occurred. There was a lot of lecture and independent classwork that students had to do. And again, the study was only done in one district. This could be different depending on the district and what gifted programs are available. The delimitations, also the school itself was 52% male, 48% female, 75% Caucasian, 9% African American, 12% Hispanic, 4% multiracial. And if you look at the study, it doesn't always align. The study, it was 70% male, 30% female. So what would happen if the demographics were a little different? However, it was 90% Caucasian, 10% African American, but none of the Hispanic or multiracial students were present in this study, and so that could also change results. So recommendations for future research. And replicating this, you get the same results outside this district? And looking specifically in districts where services for gifted students in high school are available. looking at populations where all the TUI students have the same disability. And then methods of increasing self-efficacy, looking at different curriculum and teacher training and parent involvement on how to increase this. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I do. We'll talk to you soon.